Hello and welcome to MINYIP, your fantasy sports community. I'm your host, Blake, coach of Youngies Yaks, and I'm joined by Clinton.
I'm coach of Dash's Dogs. How are you, Blake?
Yeah, good. Thank you, mate. Thank you to everyone who's listening or watching to the show. We are live for our round 13 show for AFL Fantasy and Supercoach. Please leave a like and subscribe to wherever you may be listening, whether it be Apple or Spotify podcasts or on YouTube. How's your week been, Clinton?
Not too bad, mate. It's very chilly out here in Gisborne. Lots of rain and otherwise, middle of the bye rounds. A lot of news going on. I hope you're up to date with all the news, Blake.
Yeah, a few whispers. Yep.
We've got a spread out weekend this weekend coming out with Thursday to Monday. So a lot of attention each game. There'll be a lot of frustrations with game by game. For example, there's a lot of frustration over the weekend about one Bailey Smith.
Yeah, we'll get into that into the show when we're doing our review. But very stupid. But yeah, jump the gun a bit, Clinton. Any snow in Gisborne yet?
Not yet. No doubt, pretty close.
I'm looking forward to the week that we get to announce the snow in Gisborne. If you haven't checked out our Patreon page, make sure you do. The links on your show there on YouTube, or it's patreon.com/MINYIP Fantasy Sports Community. That's how you can best support the show and become a part of our MINYIP Fantasy Sports community and get a part of our Discord group chats. The Supercoach one's pretty popular, Clinton. We need to spark up the boys a bit in fantasy to get them going. But make sure you check out the Patreon so you can support the show. Anything further to add about Patreon, Clinton?
No, I don't think so, mate. I think the big reminder is that obviously we're covering the footy this time of the year, but pretty soon, just around the corner, we'll be back into FPL. We also cover Big Bash and Supercoach Racing. Hopefully the Big Bash goes ahead. Now, have you seen that news this week, Blake?
I haven't.
Now, there's just this big other competition that's starting throughout this summer, and there'll be a lot of money thrown towards the cricketers. So we'll be maybe all the best players won't be coming to the Big Bash. We'll see.
Yeah, they need to do something to spark up the competition. Without those big players, it's quite boring to watch. Just watching the domestic competition, may as well be watching Sheffield Shield. I'm just posting the show into the Discord now, Clinton, so our patrons will be able to join us on there. Let's get into AFL Supercoach to kick off our show, Clinton, with a round review of how he went. So I scored 1943. Not too bad for Supercoach. Got a slight rise in the rankings of about 2,000, which moves me up to be 6,348. So pretty happy with that rise there. My trades that I did, I got out Bruce after he missed the week before and had the bye. I got out Sam Hayes early, and I also got out Ward, who didn't look like he was going to play anytime soon for Hawthorn, Clinton. The players that I brought in were Tim English, who only scored an 80, which was quite disappointing as my vice-captain. The Port Adelaide forward ruck in Teakle, I think that's how you pronounce it. And also JJ from Gold Coast as a bit of cash generation from Ward to Jeffrey for Gold Coast, who scored me 64, who ended up being in my points on the weekend after a few low scores were booted off my 18-player list. The thing that saved me for the week, Clinton, was my captaincy. So after the VC of Tim English failed, I chucked it on Touk Miller, who was one of your favourite captaincy options earlier on in the year. Took the risk on him, and he scored 167, which meant that I had a pretty good week. How did you go, Clint?
Very good, Blake. I scored 2,030. Very happy with that. I'm now at a rank of 1,043. So on the brink of, I guess, my season goal at the start of the year. Goal was always to finish in the top 1,000. So I'm right on the brink of that. Made similar trades. I traded out Hayes for Teakle. I jumped off the Zorko bandwagon after a rocky few weeks that I had him in my side. I also brought in Tim English. And I was really deliberating that whole last couple of days whether or not I get rid of Bruce or not. I decided I would, and I jumped on Sean Darcy. So despite actually my trades not working out, so I scored 2,030, which was in the top, I think maybe 1 or 2%. But I brought in Tim English and Sean Darcy, which were failed picks. So overall, very happy. I also had the VC on English, which didn't pan out. I backed in Rory Laird for his game, 136. So no word of a lie, I was tempted. I think I messaged you that I was very tempted by Max Gorn, but I just thought I'd play it safer. And I thought Rory Laird at home versus West Coast was sure to score well. So I backed that in. And yeah, as I said, overall very happy. And yeah, now I've just interesting position going into this week. So we'll get into that soon.
Yeah, very well played there for round 12, Clinton. Let's get into our Guess Who from last week. Yep. Yeah, remember who the Guess Who was, Clinton? It's a player you brought in.
Okay. It was Darcy.
Darcy is correct. I thought he was about to go big over the next 3. He still could over the next 2, but he only scored 59. What happened to Sean Darcy over the weekend, Clint?
They were missing a couple of key forwards, which meant that Meek actually they split ruck time, and I know it's one of those weird games where he gave free kicks away. When he went forward, they weren't really kicking to him, so it was just one of those random poor games that all players have. It'd be interesting to see if they have some players back this week and if Meek stays in the team or not. Either way, I expect him to bounce back and score pretty well. So one of those random poor scores. Just touching it back quickly with Tuke Miller. Obviously, you said you captained him. I actually went back this year with my captaincy scores, and for the best part, I've done quite well. I think of the whatever weeks we've had, about 7 or 8 times I've chosen really well. A couple of times just okay, but my 2 only real failed picks this year was when I captained Tuke when he scored about, I think it was 70 one week, and about a month ago he scored 59. So personally, I couldn't go there again. So I'm glad he scored well, but I couldn't go that way again after he's let me down a couple of times. I'm happy he's in my team, but I couldn't brave it again. So yeah, well done that he chose him wisely.
No, that's understandable, Clinton. Let's get into this week's Guess Who. And this player, Clinton, he's a midfielder. He's got the 3rd highest 3-round average of 135. He's averaging across the last 3.
Josh Keller.
Overall for this. No, he's already been one of my Guess Who's.
Okay.
He's number 2 on the list. The Guess Who is averaging 117.
Parrish.
He's played 10 games for the season, playing this week against Essendon.
Sam Walsh.
Sam Walsh is correct. Is he in your thoughts at all, Clinton?
Very much so he was, until in my trade plans I had to force in Tim English last week. The way I was planning was to bring in a midfield premium this week, but then the way that Zorko had gone and Tim English becoming a must-have in my eyes last week, I just had to move things around. So this week I'm not bringing in a premium midfielder until what's happened the last about 2 hours, and I'm reconsidering a big, bold move. So, but in short, Sam Walsh, after his ankle injury at the start of the year, he's been slowly building into the season, I believe. He's had a week off. I'm expecting him to be one of the top midfield premiums the rest of this season. So he's definitely someone I'm intrigued by, but perhaps can't fit him in this week, but we'll see.
Yeah, in 6.9% of teams as we currently speak on Wednesday night. I expect that to rise going into the weekend. He was my first pick at the start of the year. I posted on Twitter, Clinton, but when he got that injury, obviously came out of my side. So he's definitely in consideration for my plans. Let's go on to our next segment now in bold predictions. How did your bold predictions go last week for round 12, Clint?
I can't wait to recap what you had last week, Blake. I can't wait.
I think we might skip it.
I was bringing him in. I predicted Sean Darcy to go have a monster game. He didn't. Big fail there. My second bold prediction was as a farewell present to my team. I predicted McCartan and McComb to both score 90 plus. McCartan did his job. One of his very handy scores once again. So I was very happy with him. And McComb didn't achieve that. So about 2/3 of that. So pretty grim bold prediction. So I'm hoping to get a couple right this week.
My bold predictions last week. I had Tim English to score 200. So only 120 points short there.
Yes.
And my other one was Tom Stewart to score below 70.
All we have to do is laugh. Like, let's just talk about it. So
I didn't wish an injury upon him. I thought he would get tagged out of the game.
Doesn't matter, Blake. You put a moz on Tom Stewart.
I did.
However, what I will say is it's quite funny that it's like a superstition. Like if you're about to play footy and you put your left boot before your right boot, it's got to be a big deal. It's like a superstition. So when someone puts a moz on someone, it doesn't actually make a difference. But if you're in the shoes of someone who has Tom Stewart, like me, and then someone puts a moz on him, you just have immense anger towards that person. So, for example, not only did you moz him on this show, our friend Tim Mitchell, who tweeted about our show in the preseason, he commented pre-game about wanting him to score low or something along those lines. And I'm sure he copped abuse for it because he then got
Yes, he did.
So it's one of those things that we barrack for our players, but then we sort of want to barrack for our other players who aren't in our team to fail, which is a moz, but it just creates so much anger towards people. So all you can do is laugh, but at the same time, it's one of those. Just recapping before you finish your.
I didn't cheer when he got injured.
No, I know, but you want him to score low. That's the reality. I forgot what I was going to say now. The thing about it is, I've had Tom Stewart all season. A lot of people prior to that game were already saying he's too expensive. We can't have him. So it's one of those players that if he continued to dominate, super coaches weren't going to get him in. But now that he's obviously had that game, he becomes such an easier target in 1 to 2 weeks' time. So as an owner, it's just like double down frustration, but it's all part of Supercoach. So I know you felt bad about putting the moz on him, but in reality, you have to enjoy the game. So I'm not. There was a split. I'd say about 15 minutes where I was really frustrated, but it's one of those things. It happens. So.
Yeah, let's get into our bold predictions for this week, Clinton.
Just don't moz one of my players this week.
I'll kick off with my first bold prediction, and that is that starters Lockie Whitfield to play this week and to score above 95.
Is that all?
Do you know how many times he scored above 95 this season, Clinton?
He'll come back a new man after his layoff.
And that is
go bolder. Go bolder.
He hasn't scored above 96 for the whole year.
Okay.
From 9 games. I'll go 100 for you.
Yeah, it is Lockie Whitfield.
He hasn't scored over 100.
Believe it or not, if I was upgrading a defensive spot in 2 weeks' time, I wouldn't be surprised if I would be looking towards Lockie Whitfield's way in a couple of weeks if I had that option. Do you want me to go?
Your two.
My two, that's right. Save your mods to last. All right, my bold prediction is in the Monday game, Max Gorn and Darcy Cameron will score at least 300 points.
Yep. What's that? Jeez. That's very bold. Yep.
I was going to have just have Max Gorn to emulate last week and actually get 190 something, but I thought, no, I think they'll both have big games. So it'll be interesting to see if that happens. My second bold prediction is someone who's been a bit disappointed the last month. I only got him in about 5 or 6 weeks ago. A lot of people are questioning his ability to score well, but I think he'll bounce back after his bye. Jaden Short scored 130 plus. I'm backing him in for a big return game. I think he'll score well. As I said that, it just sort of struck me traditionally a lot of teams and obviously players actually come back after a bye a bit sluggish. So we'll see if that comes to fruition, but I'm backing in Jaden Short to come back big.
You don't think the reason for his low scores is because of the midfield role he's been playing?
I think it is for sure. He's been shuffled around a little bit. I've seen him lining up.
Do you think he'll go back to the back line? Or?
I'm not fussed. I'm not questioning if he could be midfield again. He could be half back. I just think he'll go big no matter what.
Okay, very good. This week's Moz Clinton.
Hey, give me 1 sec.
I think he's just going to throw up after Tom Stewart's last week. He's cracked it.
No, my dog had opened the door wide open, so I was probably echoing right around the house. Carry on.
The Moz this week, Clinton, is on a player who went pretty big last week. Had probably his breakout game of the year. Probably the best game he's ever played, and he scored about 130 Supercoach points. He's been playing in the number 1 ruck position for Collingwood of late in Brodie Grundy's absence. But this week he's coming up against the best ruckman in the competition. He'll get dominated in the ruck and around the ground between Gorn and Luke Jackson. They will put Darcy Cameron back into his rightful spot, and he'll score below 75 this week.
Have you watched Collingwood recently? I would just say, let me ask that. Have you watched Collingwood?
I watched the last game.
You watched the game versus Hawthorn?
Yes.
He's actually really impressed me. Like, ever since I got him into my team, just his work around the ground, his follow-up work. I'll be very surprised if he does score below 75. But he's in my team. He's only owned by 5% still. So he's been very initially a risky pick, but for those who brought him in, it's been a genius move. And once again, that was probably Tim Mitchell who spread the word about that one. Shout out to Tim.
Yeah, big Tree Reeves isn't exactly the same as Gorn and Luke Jackson, so we'll see how that goes this week. Good work on the bold predictions there, Clinton. Let's get into a bit of team news for next week. Now, this round that we got the Thursday teams.
I hope you're up to date.
I'll just say the big ones. In Rioli has been dropped for Richmond. He's forward mid who's popularly owned, and also Sam Hayes for Port Adelaide. He was sick this week, I believe, so they've dropped him, and he's staying in Adelaide this week. And there's a debutant for Richmond in Judson Clark. So want to keep an eye on there for teams for tomorrow. It won't be in my initial Supercoach plans. I'm not game enough to bring in a forward mid in their first game for Supercoach, Clinton.
Yeah, I think Rioli is certainly a player that people would who have him in their team would just assuming that he was going to play. So it's looking at my team, he was one of my safer rookie picks. So I thought for sure he was playing. So he's currently playing now. They're playing Wednesday night in the VFL. So um, yeah, Rioli and yeah, the other one is a lot of people might have brought in Sam Durden early as well. So the big question that doesn't sound like he's going to Marchbank's come in to Carlton's team. It looks like so. Maybe if you jumped on Sam Durden early as well, maybe that's looking like a donut as well at this stage.
Yep, that was a risky move to the super coaches who did that. Let's get into our community questions, Clinton. Yep, if you are watching the show, make sure you put in your comments there to ask questions about your team. I'll kick off with the first question for you, Clinton. There's no tricks to this one, just some straight out Supercoach questions for you this week. I thought I'd let you off lightly.
Oh,
Uh,
I actually get nervous
I saw
normally, but
I saw you last week. You were sweating, waiting for the follow up question there. So I thought I'd save you for this week. Another bit of news coming out is that Fremantle are likely to select Fife coming into this week. He's copped a bit of flack. Out of nowhere, 2-time Brownlow medalist. They're saying that he's been a selfish player and he might be looking to go to Melbourne. But when he comes into the Fremantle side for this week, Clinton, what impact do you think he'll have on the likes of Brayshaw, Will Brodie, and your man Sean Darcy?
I assume he'll largely play up forward, and then maybe, depending on the game situation, we'll have a run in the midfield just for little bits and pieces. So I think they'll ease him back. They have the bye the following week, so I don't think they'll burn him out straight away in the midfield. So I think that'll be the plan. Hopefully, yeah, for my team, I don't have Brayshaw, but I've got Darcy and Brodie. Yeah, it's definitely a watch for the next month with the likes of Brayshaw and Brodie, but in the short term, I don't think it will affect those guys' midfield time.
Yeah, I agree early on. This might offend our brother Mitchell, this next question, Clinton. I'm sure he'll be watching, so I better be careful what I say here. But Bulldogs have got a very tough run on the road home. They play pretty much against the top 6 sides, and then I think it's GWS and Hawthorn, and that's it for the rest of the year. They've got a pretty tough run, and there's a few injury concerns. Bont seems to be carrying a shoulder complaint, and now Baz Smith is going to be out for 3 weeks effectively now. Any concerns for the Bulldogs players going forward for the rest of the year after their low score and a loss?
If you own Bailey Smith, it is a concern because he's not playing for the next 3 weeks. However, for the likes of Dunkley and McRae, who are in my team, I think it's a positive. So in terms of the team, sometimes players like that play better against the better teams. Obviously, it's better for their scoring if they get a positive result and the team wins. But in the short term, for McRae and Dunkley, I think it's actually going to be a positive that I've brought in Bont early and missed it. I avoided Bailey Smith. So it's actually worked out, I think, in the short term well for those players. I won't go into too much about the rest of their fixtures, but I think you should see a small spike in those players. Bontempelli's a question mark with his shoulder. I think it's his AC joint. They can linger. So I think potentially he may, as a result, play even more time forward. So I'll discuss him a bit later in my trade plans.
Okay. Some players that have been putting in some half-decent scores over the last 3 or so weeks, Clinton, and Sam De Koning and Paddy McCartan. Will you be looking to hold these players or trade them out, considering they're scoring so well, even though they've got the bye?
I traded out De Koning last week or the week prior. I've already got rid of him. And then my plan all along was for McCartan to go. So they're all along for me. Cash cows, they've done their job. It's time to really upgrade my team. So I'm going to get that best team possible as soon as possible. So I'm not falling in love with the picks to keep them there all year. I'm upgrading to the best team I can. So, yeah, SDK is already gone and McCartan will be going this week.
Yep. Best rookie options for this week, Clinton?
A lot depends if you've gone early on the picks. Like, for example, I mentioned Durden already, and it doesn't look like he'll play. I'd already got in Jacob Ware for the Giants. I'm fingers crossed he remains. My fingers and toes are crossed for him to remain in the team. Just referring to my team, going into this week after my 2 trades already, I had 18, 14 premiums, my 4 rookies, which I wanted to play. Rioli was one, so he's already gone. Jacob Ware, I'm bringing in Owens this week, so I think all will depend if he obviously gets picked. If he gets picked, he should be coming into almost every team. The other one for me, the other rookie I have is Connor McDonald, so I'm just hoping he stays in the Hawks team. Otherwise, I'm not sure if there's a great amount of rookies. I think the other question mark now is Judson Clark, who's debuting for the Tigers. The question will be if you've already got 18, do you bring him in for just an extra player or not? Or are you opening up some cash for next week? I'm not sure, but my big question mark now is, as we stand, I've got 17. Do I bring in Clark, or do I do a bit of a premium sideways trade, which I'm really contemplating? So that's what my dilemma.
Yeah, it sounds like quite a conundrum there, Clinton.
Big word. Conundrum.
Yeah, I'm bringing out the big words for the fantasy sports community.
MINYIP.
GWS players are still looking iffy for this week, Clinton. There's a statement released today about Bruce saying they potentially might not look at him until next week. What are your thoughts on Bruce if you still had him?
Well, yeah. I think it's time to go. I mean, I was so close to keeping him last week, so huge relief that sort of come to fruition that he's not playing, because, I would have been really filthy. So at the end of the day, I brought in Darcy and he failed, but I'm hoping throughout the rest of the year he can repay the faith. But if you're trying to upgrade your team, he was sick. He was sick, and then he missed the game. He played VFL, and then they've had the bye, and now he's going to miss it. That's going to be 4 weeks in a row. So if you can justify continuing to hold with no certainty that he's coming in next week, I doubt it. I think it's time to move on and try to get to other ruck premiums. So they being obviously Gorn, Witts, and Sean Darcy potentially if he rebounds. But then obviously also the forward line, English and Cameron are going quite well.
One premium player that I thought was a premium in my side, Clinton. He's put in a couple of bad performances over the last 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago he had the flu game, and now he's put out a score of 70, and now he's looking during the week about not being enthusiastic when they don't have much of a crowd. And Christian Petrarca, any concerns regarding Petrarca's performance? And in general, how do you think Melbourne are going to rebound from what's been happening at the club this week?
In terms of Petrarca, he had a sick game. He had a poor game on the weekend. However, the only real negative is that I think if people don't have him, I think he's going to be a great option in a couple of weeks after their bye. I think he and the D's will respond this week. Obviously, a bit of pressure on the club now. They were cruising along. Everything was going swimmingly, and then all of a sudden 2 losses in a row, and the knives are out for them this week. So I'm expecting a big response, and I wouldn't be surprised if Petrarca is one of those players that has a massive game on Monday. So I don't have any doubts about him as a player. And in terms of a club, I think they'll get the job done on Monday. They'll have a bye, and then I still think they're the team to beat.
Yeah, that's pretty much all the players I had on my community questions to discuss there, Clinton. Did you want to discuss a bold strategy you had now?
Prior to do that, I think there's a lot of people upgrading. We haven't really touched. I think we touched on it very briefly before, but there's the loss of Parrish, Sam Walsh, Josh Kelly, and Zach Merritt that players are upgrading to. I think they're obviously all great options. It's just one of those things. You can justify $100,000 cheaper to get Zach Merritt, but I do think Parrish is the more safer option. But yeah, it all depends on how many more upgrades you've got to go. So I think those 4 are all good options, and yeah, it's just one of those ones where you could pick the right one. It could be genius. If you go the wrong way, you'd be disappointed you didn't get one of the other boys. So it's a lot to think about. And so we go talking about trades, are we, Blake?
Yeah, let's get into our trade plans, Clinton. Did you want me to go first or yourself?
You go for it.
Okay, no worries. Let's play the jingle. Yep, I knew you were waiting for that. So trade plans for this week. So I want to trade out 3 players. One being Paddy McCartan, who I want to downgrade. The next being Sam De Koning, who I want to upgrade. And the other being Tim Taranto, who's still been just lingering in my side and not playing. He's doesn't look like he's going to be playing anytime soon. They're saying 1 to 3 weeks, which for me isn't promising at all. The premium player that I can afford to bring in, Clinton, is Sam Walsh, who's coming into my side. So bring in Walsh, bring in Ware. Hopefully he plays for GWS this week, so he'll be coming into my side as a defensive downgrade for McCartan. And that leaves me $582 to spend on my forward line. And at this stage, I'm not liking too many options because of the Bulldogs are all not playing this week. The players that are playing this week are very much lacking. So it's quite an issue for me this week, Clinton, whether I hold Tim Taranto or I trade him to Dustin Martin.
Well, the big thing is, how many players will you have after those trades? Or if you keep Taranto, how many players will you have?
Even if Taranto doesn't play, So I want to. You just talk amongst yourselves for a second while I count how many players I have.
The reason I say that is you're forcing in a player that you don't really want. So is there a way you could work out to send one of your midfielders down to the forward line for this week and bring in another midfielder? Like, is there a way to try and sort that out? Because from what I've heard and seen this week, it doesn't look like there's... If you want to bring in Dusty and you're confident that he's going to be a premium forward option for the rest of the year, then sure, go for it. But if you're just bringing him in for a...
if I don't trade Taranto, I'll have 17 players this week.
Yeah, so it's up to you, Blake. You do you. But I would be trying to avoid the forwards this week. But it's up to you. Yeah, Taranto has been a big failure for you, unfortunately. I wasn't aware that he was still in your team, so good luck with that one. You'd almost like... Is there a way to bring in another rookie and then have more cash in the bank for... Yeah, it's up.
I don't really want to be burning. I don't really want to be bringing in another rookie when I'll be down to 7 trades after I use my 3 trades this week. I'll be down to 7, so I don't want to be really burning it doing another rookie downgrade.
Good luck, whatever you do.
Thank you. Hit me with your plans.
All along since last week, as I said, with the way I planned my team with getting rid of Zorko, I was taking out McCartan and McComb. I was bringing in Owens and Jack Sinclair. which gets me very close to full premium. So I did that literally 2 minutes after Supercoach opened. That's what I did. My team was looking good. As I said all along, that left me with 18. And I'm already down 1 with Rioli out. So until tomorrow night, we'll find out the rest of or majority of teams. So yeah, relying on where Owens and McDonald to play. Obviously, if Owens doesn't get picked, I'll reverse that trade. So I'm currently sitting at 17. I'm waiting. There's a couple of things I could do also. I can, as I said earlier, I could bring in the Richmond debutant in Judson Clark. I could easily just side swap Rioli straight to him. Roses, I prefer to keep on the bench because he's actually been scoring okay. He could be my F7 for a short term. So that's what I could do. I could just leave it and just have 17. The other option, which I've thought of literally an hour ago, just looking at my team and thinking about the amount of people that will only have the likes of 17, 16 playing.
Here we go.
The option at the moment, I've still got like a 4 in my team. I've got pretty much full premium up forward, but I've literally still got like a forward line player in the midfield. So what I'm contemplating is I brought in Marcus Bontempelli 2 weeks ago. He scored, I think, 100, a 90, then 100, and he's got a bung shoulder. He's got the week off this week, so hopefully it gives him a chance to get it back a bit. But he's got a relatively high break even. He's got the Giants after the bye. The idea I'm thinking about is getting rid of Bont.
Wow.
Just an idea. Sending my other mid forward back down forward and bringing in. I can bring in just with that cash. I've had a good look at it. I think I'm $1,500 short of getting Sam Walsh. So I can't afford to get Sam Walsh with that move, but I could get Darcy Parish. I could get obviously Zach Merritt, but I could get Josh Kelly. So it's just something I'm thinking about. And then in a 3 or 4 weeks' time, I could then trade who I think it will be my F6, which will be probably could be Darcy Cameron, it could be Zach Butters. To complete my team, I could then move them up to Bontempelli again or Bailey Smith. So as we see it, without doing that last trade, I've got 8 left. I've got full primo down back. I've got that mid forward in my midfield. So it's just something because as I said, there's people who just playing a lot of rookies, playing 16 people, 17 players this week. It's actually an opportunity, I think, to be extra aggressive, getting another premium in, making sure I have 18, which will leave me with 15 premiums. And I need where Owens and McDonald to play. But I think it'll just – and Josh Kelly is the player I'm tempted by because the next month he has great fixtures. So I'm just tempted by that. And teams may come out tomorrow night and it will change. But what do you think of that bold strategy, Cotton?
As if you'd trade out Bontempelli if he was in your team.
Well,
I was saying it sarcastically. I traded him out after round 6.
That's true. I was surprised when he did that too.
Yeah, so you were surprised when I did it, but now you're looking to replicate it. But it does make sense, Clinton. He's got that high break even and carrying that injury, even though he's coming off the bye.
Just quickly, so looking at all my other premiums, I was Tom Stewart, Rory Laird, McRae, Miller, English, Dunkley, Parker. There's no one there I would trade. Bontempelli is just that one right now with the question mark about his shoulder. I think he'll play a bit more forward, even if he continues to score 100 over the next few weeks. But I'm just thinking about this week, making a bit of a bold play to increase my ranks. And then, in a month, three weeks' time, obviously the risk is for me is just cutting down my trades and then going into. I'm thinking about 4 or 5 weeks' time. If I get a couple of premium injuries, I might be up S Creek. But that's what I'm thinking about. We'll see.
Yep. I just thought of an idea as I was sitting here, Clinton. Instead of
are you copying my bold strategy? Eh?
I just thought of an idea that I could just swing English into my forward line and try and get Max Gorn, but I am currently 3K short of it.
English should be in forward line anyway, Blake.
Exactly. So I might potentially, instead of bringing in Ware, get a cheaper rookie, and then because Ware, even if I bring in Ware this week, he's currently not in my starting 6.
Yeah.
So there's not too much point bringing him in when especially if he's not playing. So
if you want
Gorn is on my agenda.
If you want Gorn, it's very similar to English last week. If you want Gorn, this will be the week to get him in, because in my predictions, and as you predicted, if he scores another massive score, that makes it extremely hard to get in after his bye.
But then my next concern is that how many numbers I'm going to have for next week.
Once again, you'll have 3 trades, and then hopefully it should be full premium, Blake. But we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see how we go. Anything further to add before we switch across to the AFL Fantasy there, Clint?
No, I think we've gone overtime again. We always stretch it out. It should be half an hour. We've gone to 41 minutes. That's it for Supercoach. Good luck, everyone, with that.
Yeah, thank you to Supercoaches watching. Let's go across to AFL Fantasy. Yep, thank you for whoever's stuck around from this Supercoach segment or switched over to AFL Fantasy. So thank you for joining us. Make sure you like and subscribe to the show on Apple or Spotify podcast or on YouTube. Clinton, how did your round 12 AFL Fantasy go?
Dash's Dogs had a resurgence in AFL Fantasy. I scored quite remarkably. I scored 1950, which was ranked 378 for the round, and I've climbed up the ranks to 5,792, which is still very not below average, but it's still not a rank where I'd like to be. I'm still climbing the ranks. So after a very slow start, I traded out Jack Hayes, Jack Carroll, and Sam Hayes. So pretty much 3 low price players, and I brought in Owens early. I brought in Sam Durden early, which we'll see how that plays out, and I brought in Tim English. So the trades itself didn't really pan out, but I'm happy I've got English, and very surprised at how well I scored. So hopefully I can continue climbing the ranks.
Yeah, very well played there for round 12, Clinton. My round 12, I scored much lower than you, 17-18. I traded quite heavily to try and make sure I had 22 in the end because I wanted to get a lot of players in because I knew I had a lot of rookies. My overall ranking is slipped to 4,229. So getting closer, Clinton. And I'm diminishing in confidence after how my trades went. So I traded out 3 players who weren't playing last week in Mead, who I believe travelled across as an emergency for tomorrow. Gibkiss and Tom Green, who I've been complaining about ever since I got him in. So traded out those 3 players for Parnell, the first gamer, the young 12-year-old who got a corky. Buku ended up getting Buku Karmas as a bit of cash generation for Mead somehow.
Did you really?
With
That's a very interesting selection there, Blake.
It got me about 30K, and it was just an additional trade that I could make to get an extra defender on the field. And Tim English was my other one, who I thought was a must-have, and I VC'd. How did your captaincy options go last round, Clinton?
It's a great question. I'll just have a look again at who I chose. I had the VC on Bailey Smith. So a lot of people were choosing Tim English and McRae and Dunkley. I had a feeling McRae would bounce back, but I thought, no, I'll back in Bailey Smith. He scored 63. And I captained Laird in Supercoach, but with AFL Fantasy, I backed in Callum Mills. And Millsy delivered with 126. So I was quite happy with that.
Yeah, well played. My VC was English of 95, which wasn't enough. And I ended up captaining Tom Mitchell, who I thought would score well against Collingwood. Collingwood traditionally just let midfielders do whatever they want. So he scored 112 for me, which was pretty good. But there was some other big scores around him, which I should have gone in Max Gorn and McRae. No pun intended there, Clinton. Hits and misses. Let's get into that segment now. Do I have a... Yeah, let's have a little video for that. Yeah, couldn't miss the video. You just need that bit of extra breather before listening to my hits and misses. So my biggest hit was captaining Tom Mitchell, I'd say. A lot of people had gone Jackson McRae, but I was pretty happy with that captaincy option of Tom Mitchell. And my other hit was holding on to Nick Dacos, who put in a massive score of 109. He, in my opinion, that was the best game he's played so far. And yeah, it's clear to see why I think he should win the Rising Star Award. Clinton, how did your hits go?
I had a few. Normally I'm scratching the bottom of the barrel for this one, but yeah, I've had a handful of people who really delivered. Darcy Cameron, 133. Max Gorn, 149. Miller bounced back 135. But yeah, I think I'm happy that I went Mills as captain. So to score 126 as captain, that really saved me. And one special mention, Dane Zorko. He was injured early. I've kept him in fantasy. He was on about 20 at halftime. He had an injury. I thought he was done for the evening. Then he bounced back and scored 91. So those were the types of scores were the reason why I got to 1950.
Yep. And your misses for the week? Wouldn't have been many.
It wasn't many. So, yeah, just a lot of random players like Angus Brayshaw, 100. So a lot of my players actually came through. The most disappointing ones were actually, I thought, the Bulldogs. Even my rookies did their thing. So to have Bailey Smith score 63 as a VC, that's straight off the bat, yeah, big miss. Dunkley, 84. And I'd even say Bontempelli. I changed a lot of my trades a couple of weeks ago to force Bontempelli into my team, and he's disappointed the last 2 weeks, and no doubt due to the shoulder injury. So, yeah, pretty much I'd say that all three of those Bulldogs didn't get it done for me.
Yeah, it's a fair call. They would have been on my misses as well. Had my rookies not performed so badly. They are rookies, so it is my fault for having them in my team. But Butler, ever since I've got him in, he's averaged 34, your St. Pat's boy. He scored 38 on the weekend. Not good enough, butts.
He's a rookie.
Curtis, 47. Buku Kamas, who I brought in, 34. I could keep going on all day about these rookies that are in my team. But they, in the end, about 3 of them had to be actually in my points. Even though I had 22 players playing, my rookies performed extraordinarily bad in round 12.
Hopefully they score better for you this week.
Yep. Let's get into a new segment now, Clinton. Our live viewer that we had before, he must have just stayed for the Supercoach because he's currently flicked off. But Thanks for anyone who's continued watching to the show up until now. Our new segment, which I am calling "You Pick Two," is
Pardon?
we select. It needs a banner for more effect. So it's currently called "You Pick Two," but so the idea of this segment, Clinton, you pick two players and predict their score for the upcoming round, and I'll also provide my prediction for what they're going to score, and I'll also pick two players. So you pick two is the new segment.
Okay. Well explained, Blake. I thought you could have just gone with something as simple as pick the exact score.
No, you pick two.
Okay.
In the comments, I'm sure we'll get some suggestions of what to call this segment.
Okay. Can I bring to the table two players? My pick two.
You can pick two. Yeah.
My pick two. My first player is Josh Kelly. He is playing the Kangaroos this week at Marvel Stadium. In previous games at Marvel Stadium and I'm guessing against Kangaroos also, he scores very well. My exact score for Josh Kelly is 162 points.
162.
Correct.
Wow.
What do you think he'll score?
I'll go 110. I think he'll play well, but I think some other midfielders will bounce back after a bye.
Okay. My second pick two is Sam Walsh. I'm
going against Essendon.
I'm going with 151.
He's playing against Essendon. I'm attending the match this week, Clinton. So I think Essendon will put on a good performance for me. But I hope Walsh also goes very well because he's coming into my Supercoach team. So I'll say 130.
Okay, I'm writing them down. Very good. Well done.
Not as bold as you. My pick one of pick two is Christian Petrarca. After he's had a rough week and a couple of bad scores lately. Christian Petrarca this week, I think he's due to bounce back, and I think he'll score 140.
I don't mind that. I don't have him in my fantasy team. I have him in Supercoach, but I'll go slightly less than that. I'll go 124.
As I said, Collingwood just let midfielders do whatever they want, and so Petrarca. My next player is Maxwell Gorn, who is playing against your boy and Darcy Cameron. I believe he'll dominate him around the ground and also just get assistance with Luke Jackson to man up on Darcy Cameron around the ground, and Gorn will do whatever he wants. So I'm predicting Max Gorn will put in a score of 170.
170? You're saying 170, is that right?
That is correct.
That is very high. I'll go 130.
All right, Clinton, we've put in some pretty big scores there collectively, so we'll see how we look back on this next week and see if we can get some suggestions as to what people thought of our segment name, and I'll create a banner for it for next week for the You Pick Two.
This segment name might need a refreshing.
No, let's get into community questions. Very good, Clinton. Let's quickly recap players from last week that caught your eye that you think you'll be looking to, that should be in most people's sides already. Do you want me to read out the high scores from last week?
Well, it's interesting though you say that, because going into this week, we should be targeting players from the bye. So we should be almost ignoring the players from last week because I think we should be targeting players from the bye. That's just me.
If you don't have Max Gorn, what are you doing? Darcy Cameron scored the second highest score, so you wouldn't consider him for this week because of his bye?
Once again, all depends on how many players you got playing, but in an ideal world, you would have planned for these things and you'd be bringing in players off their bye to make sure you got players for this week and next. So Cameron and Gorn are great picks, but I'll almost say if you're predicting Gorn to dominate Darcy Cameron, then yeah, I don't know the answer to that, Blake. My suggestion is you should have planned for these things and you should be bringing in players off their bye.
Bailey Smith must trade out.
Yes,
especially for fantasy, being having 3 trades.
Well, that he's got the bye this week, and then 2. Yeah, he's missing the next 3 weeks. He has to go, and he can come back into teams in a month's time.
Around that price point, Clinton, do you think for AFL Fantasy, Parrish or Merritt would be a better selection?
I think they're both good picks, but similar to what we said before about Sam Walsh with his injury, I think with Zach Merritt having the same ankle injury early, I think he's starting to find a bit of form. So I just, despite the price, I actually think Zach Merritt will, in fantasy, rack up a bit more marks and uncontested possession than Parrish. Whereas Parrish, I think, is more of a Supercoach player.
Is there an argument for trading out the other Bulldogs players who underperformed last week, especially for AFL Fantasy, considering they have the bye? Is there any argument to trade out the likes of Bontempelli, Chalor, those players that scored low last week?
I'd only be doing that if your team's pretty much premium already, which is not many teams out there. So I'd be holding those players. Surely you've got other players that need to be traded before those types of players. So, yeah, I personally wouldn't be trading those, but it depends on the rest of your teams. For example, I think we're both Braden Bruce owners still going into this week. So that's a player that needs to go. So there's 2 highly priced players in Bruce and Bailey Smith that I'm trading. So I'm not going to be trading another one.
A player who scored very well last week, Clinton, in Nick Dacos. If you had plenty of players this week, would you be looking to trade him out or hold him, especially with him having the bye next week?
I'd hold him for 1 more week. I think if you didn't trade him about a month ago, then I think the plan would be to let him have one last hurrah for your team and then get him out next week. So, but once again, everyone's sides are different. So,
how about the likes of Sam De Koning and Paddy McCartan, who do have the bye this week for AFL Fantasy?
They can go. They can go.
Just simple as that.
Well, yeah, I mean, they've done their job. And, yeah, I mean, now's the right time. For those players, now's the right time. For Dacos, it's next week. So they did their job right up until the bye. They've earned their money. Depends what you're after. And if you need certain players, yeah, as I said, I've got Smith and Bruce that need to go, so I can only trade one of them. So depends on what I need, whether it's SDK or McCartan, but one of them will be going for me, I think. Unless someone like Corey Durden, who's still on my team, if he doesn't get picked, or I've still got McComb. Yeah, so I've got a few players that could go, but McCartan and De Koning, I think they're more Supercoach players. They get intercept marks. In fantasy, they don't get as much the ball. So although they're playing well, they don't have a very high ceiling. So in fantasy, I think they can go.
Sounds like so far I've put up 4 names, Clinton, and you're saying trade them all straight away. So Bailey Smith, Bruce, De Koning, and Paddy McCartan.
Yes.
If you have them all, in which order which one of them would you hold?
Well, as I sort of said it, but it's out of SDK and McCartan. You'd keep one of them because you want to get rid of Smith, you want to get rid of Bruce. The other two are sort of slightly more luxury, but it'd be one of those depending on what prices the players that you want to bring in, and that's exactly the predicament that I'm in.
Yep. Best rookie options for fantasy, Clinton? Is it more of a just a wait and see on the teams, or will you be looking at bringing in the first gamer for Richmond tomorrow in what's his stupid first name?
It's Clark. It's Judson.
Judson, that's it.
That's a bit harsh.
Though it's saying on the radio before, it's they reckon it's the first ever Judson to play AFL.
I think it might be. Obviously, what depends on teams tomorrow night, but from what it sounds, Clark looks like he gets the stats up pretty well, and yeah, I think at this point in time, I'm bringing him in because there's not many rookie options at the moment. We'll see if there's any more other rookies announced tomorrow throughout the day. So yeah, at this stage, Clark is coming into my team.
Yep. They said there was a surname of Judson, but not a first name. So you think bring him in even without seeing? I suppose you'll see the other teams before that game goes ahead. But if you're like me, you'll be at footy training and won't see the teams before making that decision.
It's always tricky on Thursday nights, but it's better to play it safe. And yeah, so you'd hate to pass on Clark and then there's no other rookies and you get training and you miss out on Clark and he scores well, you'd be a bit filthy on yourself. So I think it's safer for me to go ahead and just pick Clark because with the players I'm trading out, I want one rookie and two premium. So that's just the way it's shaping up for me.
Yep, we've gone a bit overtime with our Supercoach segment. Clinton, was there any other players you want to discuss in AFL Fantasy before we get into our trade plans?
I don't think so. I think now's the right time to target matchups and I guess short-term fixtures. And that's what I'm doing with my trade-ins. And yeah, once again, it's imperative that you try to plan well for these buys and try to get your team set up for after the buys. And I think it's the eye test is so important because some teams throughout this time of the year, they actually, depending on where they're on the ladder, they start changing quite a few things. So the buy time is interesting because you need to really pay attention to players changing positions. Some players, some teams that are right down the bottom, they start resting players. So you have to really pay attention to players' roles. And I'm bringing in guys who I think can have a really big month coming up. So,
yep. Let's get into our trade plans. So I'll talk through mine, Clinton. So I also have Bailey Smith. So my first trade off the bat will be Bailey Smith to Zach Merritt. 2 weeks ago, Clinton, I came up with a genius idea of approaching my buy strategies in the situation I was, that I would carry 3 ruckmen through the buys, one of which wouldn't play each week. So those players were Max Gorn, Jared Witt, and Bruce. Mm-hmm. So I'd always have 2 ruckmen playing each week of the buys. And now it looks like Bruce most likely won't be playing this week. I'm just praying he does, because that would just absolutely ruin my strategy if he doesn't play. I'm going to be trading out a ruckman this week. It was initially going to be getting rid of Witt to a bottom basement ruck forward option in probably Teakle. But it'll all depend on selection. So at this stage, Witt's to Teakle, and that will allow me to go Sam De Koning up to Dan Houston.
I'll tell you what, Blake, Each week, I'm getting more and more confident I'm going to overtake you. Each week, I get more and more confident.
I would be too after hearing that.
But as I say, you do you. But yeah, how long have you had Wits in your team?
It was like 2 or 3 weeks because I came up with this strategy,
Okay.
and
You do you.
it's backfired with Bruce not coming back strongly.
Yeah. Well, I suggest planning ahead in case Bruce doesn't play and working out your different trade plans because you different price points. So yeah, I think it's always interesting if you change one decision, it can change another, which is what I'll get into with my trade plans because I'd planned things all day today and I actually thought I was quite comfortable with my trade plans. Very similar to you. Hey, Will. I was also looking at bringing in a cheap ruck forward in Teakle. That way I could have 2 premiums in the ruck, pretty much 2 ruck forwards in the forward line in English and Cameron. And then, have Teakle. So that was my plan. So I was actually planning on getting rid of Bailey Smith, McCartan, and McComb. And I was bringing in Teakle, Zach Merritt, and Lockie Whitfield. Those were my trade plans earlier today. I think Whitfield will come back in and dominate. And Merritt at his price, I think, was too appealing. All right. So those are my plans. And then in the space of the last couple of hours with hearing the news about Bruce, I've looked at my trades. I then have decided to move on Smith, Bruce, and McCartan. Now, I was going to bring in Teakle still and 2 other premiums, but then I worked out that if I brought in Teakle, now that he's not selected, which was likely to be the case, I thought for a glimmer of a small point in time this afternoon, I thought he might have been playing this week, but I worked out that I had 17 playing, so I couldn't do Teakle. So the way I've shaped up at this point in time, I'm taking out Smith, Bruce, and Paddy McCartan, and I'm bringing in our mate Richmond for tomorrow night at the debutante, and I'm bringing in Judson, and instead of Whitfield and Merritt, I'm now bringing in my 2 pick 2s. I am bringing in Josh Kelly and Sam Walsh because Whitfield and Merritt I was choosing due to their price, slightly cheaper, and I was expecting a big month for them. But over the course of next month, I'm just expecting Josh Kelly and Sam Walsh to dominate. They're the players I wanted, but I couldn't afford. But I'm playing it quite aggressively and bring those 2 premiums in. What do you think?
Yeah, sounds good. How many players do you have playing this week? Sorry,
I have 18. Sam Durden, who I brought in last week, is the disappointing one. It hasn't been announced. Obviously, Marchbank is playing. He's got announced, so it doesn't look like Durden's going to be playing. So that's a disappointing trade in from last week. But that's still including I need Ware to play, Corey Durden to play, and I guess Sam Durden's still a small possibility. Maybe, fingers crossed, they announce him tomorrow, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I've got 18.
Yeah, so do I. After my trade, so it's not too bad if I still trade out Wits, and I'll have 400k in the bank coming into next week.
And I might be past you in the rankings.
I'll be in your rear vision mirror by then. But my team is pretty much almost done, I would say. My weakest link is Greg Clark and Nick Dacos.
Who are you going to VC and see, Blake?
I currently have it on Zach Merritt, my trade-in, as my VC, and my captaincy, bit controversial after his last 2 games, is on Christian Petrarca.
Yeah, no, back yourself in. Good stuff. My VC is on Sam Walsh, and my C is on Josh Kelly.
I take that back about my captaincy. It's going to be on Max Gorn.
Well, you did predict he's scoring 170, so it was surprising you're going to have the C on him.
Yes. Yep. Anything further you want to add before we wrap up there, Clint?
That's all, Blake. Obviously, things can change very quickly. As normal, we record this on Wednesday night. Things could change drastically tomorrow night. So, yeah, I've played it aggressive in Supercoach. Going to scramble towards 18 in fantasy. It's somewhat similar, but I've got some room to move. But very important few weeks coming up, and it's going to be separating the best teams or the okay teams, and maybe Dash's Dogs will be surpassing Youngie Zacks in both formats this time next week.
Maybe I'll get closer to you in Supercoach rather than you just passing me in both formats. But, yep, good luck for round 13, Clinton. Thank you to whoever has watched or listened to the show. And, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel so you can watch next week for our live show. So good luck, everyone, for round 13. See you, Clint.
Bye, Blake.